As the moon sets and the dawn rises on a rural day in France, I am thinking, perhaps appropriately enough, of Schopenhauer and the curse he has given to modernity. A curse, no doubt, he would think was funny. Who was Schopenhauer? Oh, he's born at about 1789, during the height of the terror, I think. It might have been a little before. Dies in 1860. He writes one book, usually translated as The World as Will and Representation. He writes it at the age of 28. He revises it repeatedly. Never changes his mind. So he's a nitwit. He spends his life reading the Times and has this wonderful routine life where he always does the same thing at the same time. He was also a famous curmudgeon, misogynist, misanthropist. You name it, he hated it. So why should he matter to you? Well, modernity would be impossible without Schopenhauer. Not only was he a direct influence, for what it's worth, on Freud, and a very direct influence, and it's worth a lot, on Nietzsche. But more than that, in a twisted way, he gave us our modern politics. Let me explain. Schopenhauer starts by simply accepting one of Kant's great ideas is just right, and we're just going to move on. So the great idea of Kant is that the world as I understand it, is my idea of it, is my representation of it. You see, Kant says in The Critique of Pure Reason, the manifold of perception, the shifting many things of impression that must press upon my mind as a turgid stream, is by itself imperceptible. It's that move that he thinks breaks Hume. And in conventional readings of Hume, it does. You have to be me and pull Hume somewhere else to make him say something different for it not to. Because it would mean that you don't learn the world through perception, but rather you've already transformed that perception into something in order to be able to learn at all. And it is that thing that does the transforming that allows learning to exist. Now, for Kant and for Schopenhauer, that's reason. And what reason does is it manufactures the world of time and space, an internal world of time with its corollary, the external world of space. Without space and time, we would not be able to tell whether events happened because I moved my head or my camera, or because the dog is running across the field or sniffing down there. We would not be able to tell in terms of impression, temporal flow, from merely my movement in the present. There has to be an a priori structure that allows you to define them. Fine, you might say. So the world is my representation. What of it? Well, for Kant, it's terribly important. It means you can ground reason. And once you can ground reason, as a good Enlightenment thinker, he thinks, well, hey, the soul is back on in there. And he gives you a long and beautiful account in the Critique of Practical Reason about how reason, once it is understood not as not defining the world, but as that which allows the world to be defined, can introduce into that world morality and God and all sorts of higher principles. At which point Schopenhauer starts to cackle. Because Schopenhauer says, all right, if the world is just my idea, what really exists? What do I know really exists? And then, of course, he looks in his own soul and he discovers that he's actually a rat bag. And so he immediately says, well, what really must exist is my will, my desires, my passions, my selfish wants, and above all, a rage to exist that defines what I am, that gives me all my feelings, that makes me be at all. And so he devises the world between representation, the idea we have of it, that is itself merely an adjunct, a servant of will, desire, lust. And, of course, Schopenhauer absolutely points out that sad fact we all live in. Logic isn't worth a cocked hat when it comes to argument. You don't win an argument in logic. Not really. Not in the end. The great right-wing demagogues who sometimes get said to be great debaters couldn't debate with my dog. Our ears are better debater than they are. What they can do is shout. She can do that too, but she doesn't shout quite that loud. She doesn't have television helping her. What they can do is make you feel. And so it is, you'll be whipped up to fear the stranger, the asylum seeker, anything that's a bit different, by those who want your loyalty. You'll be told that you are a white tribe, somehow unprivileged. In a world where a white tribe never existed, it's always a mystery to me what it means. Do you mean Anglo-Saxon, Celtic? Never mind. Move on, Matthew. Okay, you get my point. The point is that most arguments are made of emotive feeling that are irrespective of logic. And for Schopenhauer, that's just politics being honest. He would say that the Trump election campaign that knowingly told no truths was actually the most honest of campaigns. Because there is no truth to tell beyond desire and lust. All right. But Schopenhauer wants to go a bit further than that. He's not just such a nihilist as that. He also introduces two further ideas in his second two books. The next one is that if you want to move beyond the will, you can perfect representation so it becomes a renunciation of the will, and therefore a renunciation of that fierce desire to live. Here he quotes Brahmins. He's terribly influenced, interestingly, by Hindu texts. For such a racist, it's one of the most fascinating things. He has to evoke the notion of Aryan in order to be able to do it. Anyway. Now, 20 years ago, I used to think that idea was just, well, not tosh. It's kind of historically interesting. And within Hindu context, no doubt makes a lot of sense. But within Schopenhauer, you go, oh. But these days, when I think that asceticism and resistance are very closely allied, so that sometimes the only way you can fight is to not engage, to not become part of the endless information exchange where somebody is quietly garnering everything you say and holding it in evidence against you. That idea of renunciation starts to feel like real resistance once again, to a point. And as I said yesterday, it is only ever to a point. But it's not that book that I think is most influential. It's the final one. You see, in the final one, Schopenhauer thinks of another way you might move beyond the selfish will. He outlines art, and he gets terribly excited, really, really excited in his theory of art. But his theory of art is that art represents the will, not as it is in us, but as it is in itself for itself. It becomes then some sort of affinity, some sort of moment we all share, a quickening of passions, a feeling without immediate cause, a feeling that can be felt for and in itself. Schopenhauer has lots of very beautiful things to say about music that he feels is the highest of the manifestation of the will. And that's all again fine and dandy. But of course, in modernity, it stopped being at all beautiful. Because Schopenhauer's idea is that idea that feeds into Bernays and the invention of advertising. The idea that you can reach souls quicker by music than you can by anything else. That you can subvert reason. You can subvert any single identity by getting people to identify with a certain cheesy tune that will make them have to think things. That will drive their mind this way, not that. Music then becomes the supreme interconnector of humans that lies beyond logic, beyond anything they can quite put their finger on. It becomes then the absolute agent for political campaigning. It becomes the way you drive your message of feelings home. And it's all there in Schopenhauer. He does say that. And so if you want to understand the modern world and why it is so pants, you have to listen to the screaming misogynist of Frankfurt and wonder why he became so influential for us all. There you go, 10 minutes on Schopenhauer. I didn't think I'd manage that. He still obviously is an important philosopher for me. See you tomorrow.